Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. He's a man, goddamn is he.
Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. I'm Joel Goldberg. Got a really great discussion today coming up about these changing times, about innovation, which of course innovation has always been important, perhaps more so now than ever. We'll delve into that. Quick shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. You can find them at chiefofstaffkc.com in this forever changing world that we're living in and the great resignation. They are the ones that are placing people in the right spot. Chief of Staff Kansas City. I'm proud to be friends and in partnership with them, making connections that matter. chiefofstaffkc.com. As for my guest, this will be the second guest that I've had on from my partner and sponsor, Community America. And the first was Lisa Ginter, their CEO. Actually, she was the first and the second. The third will be my guest today, someone that I've been a fan of for a long time, since I delved into the speaking business and talking about culture. When it comes to the whole pursuit of excellence thing, our guest today gets it in a way that few can articulate. She's a brilliant creative who delivers perfection, but chooses to color outside the lines nonetheless. Why? In a word, innovation. Joining us is Anita Newton, a serial entrepreneur and marketing junkie, but perhaps best known as the Chief Innovation Officer of Community America Credit Union. With a proclivity for fun and willingness to say yes, she introduces groundbreaking ideas that challenge boundaries. She's even the mastermind behind a first-of-its-kind product that has revolutionized the financial landscape for college-bound students. With her perpetually action-oriented leadership style, she aligns her teams towards a singular focus, welcoming each new challenge as an opportunity to create another one of her masterpieces. I would just say, before finishing that intro, that she's someone that I've learned with away from the podcast world. I mean, we'll get all the good stuff right now, but just sitting down for coffee, I've gotten to know Anita on a personal level, and I always learn. I'm always inspired, and it's been fun to get to know her, and I've been wanting to share her thoughts for quite a while. So now that I've embarrassed her with that intro, I don't think that it's embarrassing, but I'm excited to bring in my friend, Anita Newton. How are you?
Hey, how are you? Good to hear you. I need to hire you as my publicist for sure.
Well, I know. I first off, I have a great assistant and researcher. Not that I didn't know everything that I just read. She just writes it better than me and sums it up better than me. I just say I'm a big fan and I learn from you and your energy, and you're amazing and you're always thinking outside the box. And I kind of want to start there. I've told you many times that my podcast is meant to be organic, and so I'm actually really excited about this one in the sense that I already know you so well, but yet I still know that we can go in directions that I don't necessarily know where we're going, which is good because it means that I'll learn on the spot. But you said something to me the last time we met for coffee somewhat recently, that our kids, and we have kids the same age, that know each other, at least our sons do, that our kids right now will, not now, but they will be applying for jobs once they get out of college. They will be applying for jobs that don't necessarily exist at that point. I mean, that to me is innovation at its greatest. Can you explain that a little bit? Because it's mind-boggling to me to sit there and think about the fact that 5 years, 10 years down the road, there's stuff going on and we have no idea yet.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast. And I love your walkout song, by the way. I'm going to have to learn more about that on a separate conversation. But you bring up a good topic. And I think it's really an inflection point for this next generation. It's so different than when you and I were, going to school. And this is a generation that is the smartest, least smartest generation in our history. I mean, they know so much, but they have so much that they still need to learn. And we can talk more about that. But in regards to your comment, it is amazing when you think that when students or young people who are in school today, whether it's fifth grade, whether 5 or 15, will graduate from college and go after jobs that haven't even been invented yet. I mean, if you even look back, 5 years, there wasn't a drone operator. There was such thing as a driverless car engineer. An ecosystem lawyer. I mean, there's the jobs and the roles that people are going after don't exist. And then you compound on top of that the complexity of the world. When we were going to school, the biggest issue that our parents complained about was potholes on our street. And now it's the fact that it's, 85 degrees in January. And so these issues are more complex. It's like cutting water. And so the skills that you need are very different than being able to recite the War of 1812, learn about it, and then forget about it. That's not a skill set that's going to be helpful today. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, yes and no, right? I mean, yes, it makes absolute sense. It's also mind-boggling. So that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Also very exciting, though. I mean, as someone that loves innovation like yourself, I think we all love innovation. I think there's a lot of us that pushes back against it because change is always difficult. I
Yeah.
don't think that has ever changed. I think that the world changes, and obviously we're dealing with things right now that we've never dealt with in our lifetime, in terms of the pandemic and other issues, and right now the Great Resignation. But as Simon Sinek, I've heard often say, and he said it to me on a virtual that I was moderating. He said we've always had change, so that's nothing different. But it feels like everything is accelerated right now. Maybe that's what it felt like to our parents when cell phones came around. Maybe that's what it felt like to our parents when cable television ended up going beyond that box that was above your TV where you had to push a button or switch from the whatever it was, like the A and the B bands or whatever. But change has always happened. But am I right that it feels like it's more so now than ever, or does it just feel like that because it's the moment?
No, I think it's accelerated. And I think it's accelerated, and I think the gap between school and work has widened. So if I go back to this generation, I mean, Generation Z, anyone who's in the ages of, call it 10 to 24, I feel like they're so creative. I mean, you can give them $25 and internet connection, and they can create amazing things online. They understand the world at a different level. They've never known a world without a smartphone. So how they think about technology, I think, is so organic than when, you and I are trying to figure out, what Discord is, for example. But the gap between work and school is different. So in school, I think that is the challenge. So school, the system has not changed demonstrably in 100 years. And when you think about the world where in the classroom, where you literally are given a syllabus, you're told exactly what to do, you learn the syllabus, you memorize the information, you take the test and you regurgitate it, and then you probably forget it. That is not work. So in work, I think about think about this podcast. You didn't know how to do a podcast when you started. You just had to go figure it out. And so the skill sets that we need now are very different. And that's where a lot of the work around real world learning has come in. And I just think there are a lot of different things that young people can do today that helps them win in the world. And happy to talk about that. But does that make sense to answer your question?
It does. And I think that, I mean, again, to me, it's exciting because if it's accelerated, then, we're seeing some groundbreaking developments at a frantic pace. But that also means that as employers, as leaders, that we've got to be able to adjust to the times. It's been fascinating to me over the last couple of years to watch the companies that have thrived in spite of, or maybe at times because of this pandemic, and then others that have really hit the wall, folded, or had to figure out quickly how to reinvent themselves. And
Yeah.
there's this, like you guys at Community America, and it's one of the reasons, along with being a member, why I'm so happy to be aligned and in partnership, is because of who you are as an organization, as a
Yeah.
community, and the way that you take care of people. I know that sounds like I'm pandering here, but you know, a lot of the companies that I do get a chance to work with, even from a speaking standpoint, are ones that are trying to figure that out or haven't figured out and continue to invest in it. And it's just so interesting to me right now to watch the development of culture and how important it is right now, that it's not enough to say this is the way it is, suck it up and pay your dues, because that just doesn't work anymore. And so if the
Yeah.
world is moving this fast, especially for the younger generation, for Generation Z, how do we as leaders and employers keep up with that, in not so much the innovation in terms of technology, but the people?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think so. Um, for students, just one other key thing is the problem with the education system is your success or failure is based on grades, and there's only one way to get the right answer. And as we both know, in innovation, there are hundreds of different ways to get the answer. So what has to happen is a couple of things. Is we have to make students and create environments where young people understand that when they come into the workforce, there is not one right way to do anything. There isn't an A. You don't get like a grade on your test. It is less about that, and it's the rate and speed of learning. So that's the first thing, and that we have to unwind and deprogram people to think that there's only one way to win. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to help the next generation get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you cannot grow, you cannot innovate if you don't fail. Think of the last time a student or a young person came in and got a bad grade or took a hard class and they got a C. We think that's a failure. Well, if you're going to grow, you're not going to do well. And we don't create an environment where people can fail. And it's not failing, it's learning. And that is a total different thing. And so the things that we, in our lab, innovation lab, we work with a lot of young people, and we tell them, find ways to build that muscle of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's hard to do it within the context of the academic environment, because it's a brand cue, grades matter. But at the same time, you have to start those muscles around, finding ways to innovate. And that's why we talk a lot about side hustles, because that's a great way to do that. So those are some things. And then the other thing is just dealing with your negative self-talk, because it's great. Change, innovation is great. But even before you start, if in your head you say to yourself, I can't do this, then you probably are not going to be able to do it. So those are the things that we talk about in our lab and when we're talking about people in order to win and really innovate.
And I mean, in terms of the culture piece too, the investment in Gen Z, the investment
Yeah.
in helping with everything you just said, essentially short term and certainly long term leads to better culture and development, right? I mean, like in baseball terms, and I would say not everything needs to be in baseball terms, but I think this is relevant here. I've told people all the time that the Royals, after winning the World Series and going to back-to-back World Series, and then still having a couple decent years, they dropped off in production because their talent left, and they're having to rebuild that talent, and they've got young people, but their culture never left. And so they're not starting from square one, because they were they were investing in all those young guys, who I think that the process will now speed up and be good long-term because of that. But there's an incredible investment here for employers, right? In terms of that younger generation and helping them learn to fail and helping them do everything that you've talked about.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of the culture piece?
It has to be. And it has to be. And I would just step back and just say it's not just the culture of our company, it's the culture of our community. If you and I want our children and our neighbors' children to come back and work and live in a vibrant Kansas City 10, 50, 100 years from now, we have to invest in young people and help them with the tools and skills to win in the world. And it's the things that we've talked about. It is, helping them learn that it's okay not to fail. It's okay to fail. It's not about failing. It's about learning. It's giving them validation and helping them with their negative self-talk. And then also it's giving them the basic essential tools financially so they can win in the world. And that's where we really started at our lab. Was we realized that, there are a million education sessions on financial literacy, and most of them don't work. And so we started saying, why is that? Why are we not able to give people the basic tools? Because you cannot be free. You cannot live a vibrant life if you don't have the basic understanding of financial and financial wellness. And we all have to do that, not just Community America, but every one of us as, the next, to help that next generation move forward and thrive.
Before I want to hit a little bit of your background on how you got to where you did, because that's always fascinating to me. But I'm looking down, and just keep this discussion going, I'm looking down at some notes, and this is always fun. It's why I take my notes. The first time that you and I met, and we were connected, before our sons played hockey together and all this type of stuff, early on when I was kind of venturing out and starting the speaking business and meeting everybody that I could meet, I'm looking at my notes right now on my phone, and they are listed as February 13th, 2018. So that was 4 years ago. And here's what I had at the top of my page, because the world has changed in those 4 years, right? But here's what I wrote. These were my observations from what you said. Innovation was the first word I wrote on there. 9 out of 10 fail. Innovation is a process. The biggest lies are the ones that we tell ourselves. That hasn't changed. Maybe, again, it's accelerated, but that part is not new, right? I mean, this is something that you were saying to me 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I have not grown up in the financial services industry. And when our CEO talked to me about this innovation lab, I told her exactly what you and I just discussed, which is 9 out of 10 innovation labs fail. And that's true of any startup, any new venture. The success rate is about 10%. And so you have to know that going in, and you have to be really intellectually honest around, what I said back then, which is really true, is the biggest lies are the ones we tell ourselves. And really put together kind of, and what we've done here in the lab is put together a very flexible, lightweight process to help run products, applications, new ideas through this test and learn process, knowing that I wouldn't even call it failure. It's like only 1 out of 10 are going to be ones that you actually really want to scale and win. And if you get good at this, what happens is the 9 that aren't successful, you spend the least amount of time testing and learning to see how well they're doing before you launch. So the reduced amount of cost, maximum amount of learning, so that when you do find that one big thing, you've really been able to launch it effectively. And that hasn't changed. And that is a process that I think has been really, really successful for us at Community America.
And critical too. I mean, I think critical for everyone to, you can't stay living in the past forever. There's another Simon Sinek one from his book, The Infinite Game. I mean, hey, Community America is on top. Community America. I mean, look at the brand right now. Look at what you guys have built. Look at, you're everywhere, and Chiefs and Royals and this and that today. But what about tomorrow? Yeah. What about the next day? I mean, that ends up being important. Well, let's go back to the past. Tell me about childhood and how you ended up getting to where you did in such an influential, and I know you're humble, but I mean, the amount of awards, the amount of charities that you're involved with, the amount of causes, the amount of lives that you're affecting is truly amazing. But how did it all start for you?
Oh my goodness, you're so thoughtful. I'm from Wichita, Kansas. I grew up with 2 parents from India, living in Archie Bunker's neighborhood. And we had a family of 7, 1 bathroom. So I think I learned more about patience in that house than anything else I've ever done. And then I went to after high school, I went to KU. So I bleed crimson. I like to say that Mario's Miracle was one of the most amazing things, and my wedding was only slightly better. So, Jayhawk runs through my blood. But after college, I got a master's in public policy, and I realized that government wasn't for me. So I ended up just randomly carrying a bag at Procter and Gamble in sales in Brooklyn and Queens. And that was so humbling to be a kid from Kansas trying to, convince Joe Grocer for that, they needed an end cap of Tide in order to win. So did that, worked at P&G marketing, and then got my MBA, and then was at Sprint, where they let me do things that my resume suggested I wasn't even remotely qualified for. But it was pretty effective. So I mean, it was a great career. I was really in big company marketing at P&G and Sprint, and really was doing so well. And then in my mid 30s, I started to get kind of antsy, and I wanted to do something more flexible with my, try more startups and do other things. And my kids were young. I wanted a more flexible schedule. And it was interesting at Sprint. I was I was one of the youngest vice presidents. I had, I think a $700 million budget. I ran all media and consumer marketing, and I had a very large organization that I was responsible for. And I called a headhunter, one of the hottest headhunters in town. And I remember telling him, hey, I'm kind of a big deal. I'm ready to have people hire me. And to paraphrase, he basically said, you're kind of not a big deal and no one will hire you, which I was gobsmacked, because I thought that I had really written my own ticket. And what he said was, in a big organization, you do some good things, but you really don't know how to do a lot of the main things that would be attractive to a smaller mid-sized company. So I, had to eat a lot of humble pie, and kind of left my corner office for a corner in the office and started from the bottom. Because I think if you're in marketing, you can't, if you don't know how people consume media and you don't understand it, you become a fossil. And you have to be like Madonna and reinvent yourself. Or I guess it's like Lady Gaga now. Maybe it's Billie Eilish. I'm not sure. But reinvent yourself every 3 to 5 years. So I started from the bottom and did everything from the ground up. Did my own social ads, my own search campaigns, wrote my own copy, did my own video, and worked with a lot of startups over the last 10 years to really understand how media and marketing and innovation work together to really be effective. So now that I'm in this job, that's kind of like Goldilocks, not too big, not too small, kind of in right. It's taught me a lot about, how you have to win, and you can't be complacent. And it comes back to what you're talking about, innovation. So that's kind of the long, small, the long and short of it all, but it's a little bit about me.
Well, and there's something in your personal story too about failure, right? And there is for all of us. I mean, that hasn't changed, right? I mean, again, if the world has changed and everything's accelerated, but it was that failure, it sounds like, that helped bring you to where you're at today.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think the most important thing that I would say, and I talk to a lot of people about innovation and the process. I mean, the process of innovation is really, it starts with your customers and data and talking to your customers. And we can talk about tips, but ultimately that means nothing unless you as a human being feel comfortable to take risks. And the way you take risks, whether you're 15 or 55, is by getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. And it's like a muscle. It's the more you do it, the better you are. And I don't think if you're in a corporate environment, let's say you're an accountant, that you're going to start a business tomorrow. That is a huge leap. But what can you do in your office today to take a little leap? Maybe it's raising your hand or making a comment in a meeting. Maybe it's participating in on a task force that's unrelated to your business. Maybe it's joining a nonprofit or helping out with accounting services in a startup, just to start to learn and get excited and do things differently. Over time, you build that muscle. And now, like, I don't even think about it. But when I started, I was plagued with fear, and that negative voice in your head prevented me from doing things. And over time, I've just gotten better tools and gotten better practice at it.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And it's that mental muscle. There's maturity to it as well, I think. And some people figure it out earlier, some people figure it out later, some never figure it out at all, unfortunately. And it's a great message too. I mean, I think that we all probably would prefer to avoid being uncomfortable, but there's almost something, it's like that. It's like that firefighter going into the fire. It's that law enforcement going into the action, that military, instead of running away from it, that there's almost something like, hey, there's something here. Let's go for it. I guess that's the mindset.
Yeah. And I think, some people just have it, but we're, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, we're trained. Mm-hmm. We're not trained to fail. We're trained to get the right answer every single time. We spend 20 years of our lives being told that there's only one way to be successful, and you're validated based on your grades or your performance review. And so we have to unlearn that. And I think it's a process. It comes down to really simple things, first principles, negative self-talk, like build a process. If you want to do something and your brain tells you that there's no way you can do it, you need to build a process to address the negative voice in your head. There's a really good book called Chatter that can help with that. And then it's curiosity, being curious and being open to the possibility there are other ways to do things. I mean, if you do those two things, you are like better than 90% of the folks in the world.
Yeah.
And then the third is just in a business, listen to your customers. And that is a really important point, because even in Kansas City, the world has changed so dramatically. I mean, when you think about what's going to happen, when you and I sit down 5 years from now, Kansas City will look very different. Like, people are getting older, and the folks who are younger are getting much more diverse. The way they consume media is so different. What they think about, what they dream about is completely different than when you and I were in school. And so listening to your end users and just asking them what they think in a dispassionate way and asking why, if you can do those things and create an environment where you can have those conversations, then you have the raw materials to really do incredibly innovative things. That's how you create a culture, in my view.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. It's so good. I couldn't agree with you more. And, two of the words that have just been popping up over and over again, like at an accelerated rate right now in terms of culture, is curiosity and listening.
Yeah.
And, my friend Andre Davis talks about going on a listening tour. And
right.
Peter Clune at Lockton talked about taking over as the CEO in May at the start of that pandemic and just listening. And it's a hard thing to do because we're in a society right now where everything is right now and everything is instantaneous. And listening takes patience in this quick, fast-paced world that we live in, that world of Gen Z and millennials, I guess, to some extent, of never having known any other way. And so there's this, we could go on. And I told you that we potentially would, but I got to rein it in a little bit because this conversation will go 3 hours, which I'm not Joe Rogan. There's a whole other discussion.
Well, can I add one point to that around curiosity and listening? Because I think you can combine the two in a really meaningful way. Brené Brown, she said something really interesting. Curiosity is the superpower in your middle age. So if you're over 30, that is really what's going to help you win in the world. But my point is, when you're listening to someone and someone says something that you think is wrong, like your marketer and your finance person says, we should not do that, or someone, or in your personal life, your husband, your kid, if you can stop and just take a beat and say, I wonder why they think that, and just be curious about why they think it. It will dramatically enrich your listening skills, because you'll go into instead of going into you are wrong, you reframe and you sort of train your mind to say, I wonder why they think that. Tell me more. And then it's more out of a curiosity to understand versus let me tell you why you're wrong. That just very subtle, just asking that question, or even in yourself when you're feeling bad about yourself, I wonder why that. Just being curious will help shape and help you grow and be more effective personally and in your conversations.
Well, I mean, as journalists, they teach us you should really start all questions. We're guilty of using crutches and not always asking questions but I tell the young journalists now too, start a question with what, why, or how. The when and the where you need to know, but the what, the why, and the how will give you the best answers. And the why. So, I mean, we saw that you hit a home run. It's so easy to say, well, how did it feel to describe the emotion of, and I'm guilty of that too. But what did you see? How did it happen? But of course, I'm living in a world where I got to try to figure out a way to fight back against the cliches, because the cliches are easy for them and it keeps them out of trouble. But that why question is always so relevant, and I just these are differentiators for people. The good listeners and the understanding. And I'll finish it up with this, and then I want to get to my baseball theme question. Questions. The number one, to me, the number one topic, at least that I talk about, that I find the most valuable in terms of building culture and successful organizations, is trust. It's hard to build. When you do it, it is another differentiator. Of course, you have to work on it still every day. I believe you can build trust by being curious and taking authentic and genuine interest in people's why. You don't have to agree with them, but when they know that they can be heard and you're not just pushing them away, they suddenly are willing to embrace whatever differences are. And I think you build trust that way, because enough people, whether it's the younger generation or just, different political beliefs, whatever it is, we're programmed to have somebody push back against us and say, oh, you're wrong. And when they actually take interest in that why, you tend to open up a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I mean, you said it really, really well. And I would agree with you. And I think that is the foundation. And I would just add another thing that we've been talking about. The theme is you got to be confident. It's really hard to build trust and be curious and make and create new ideas if someone is really insecure. Because part of it is you and I trusting each other and being able to challenge each other and challenging our ideas. That's how you get the best stuff. When you have customer input, data, and then we're having conversations. And I see it at Community America. I mean, it is like magic, because everyone truly believes in each other. They trust each other, and we're all here to help our members win. And that is consistent, whether you're the frontline employee all the way to the CEO. And that's that. And it's kind of like pornography, like it's hard to describe, but when you see it, when you come across a culture like that, it's incredible.
Yeah. It's hard to find. And then it's, I don't want to say, well, it is. It can be hard to keep, but with the right people, the right processes in place, which I know you guys have. I always say culture is not a check the box. It's like diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not a check the box. Once you have it, you got to keep working on it. It doesn't just end right there. Baseball themed questions. Let's fly through these here. What's the biggest home run that you have hit professionally? What has been? Yeah. Go on. Sorry. What's been that biggest moment for you?
I think it's been I've had a lot of success, awards and startup success, but it honestly has been the ability to figure out, it's probably it's what I'm doing now, because I'm doing what I love, and I'm able to do it in a culture and a place where I love. And I have been able to design a life that makes me happy and that I feel can change the world. So that would be the home run.
That's a heck of a home run. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it?
Oh my God, how much time do you have? So many swings and misses. holy cow, a lot of misses. I think when I was working in the startup world and middle-aged, trying to figure out how to do a Facebook ad or search campaign, stubbing my toe a lot and building them and just feeling pretty incompetent and just learning and building the muscle to just every day 1% get a little bit better and feel more comfortable. That has been a lot of misses, but ultimately, you get at the plate enough where you start to figure out how to get the bat moving.
No doubt. That self-doubt is that imposter syndrome. By the way, we all have it, and it's how we learn how to deal with it, how to recognize it. I'm the same way. Last baseball theme question, small ball. What are the little things that add up to the big results to you?
Say that again. You faded out a little bit.
Small ball. What are the little things that add up to the big results for you?
I would say the moments where I'm able to connect meaningfully with people that matter in my life, at home, at work, my coworkers, my friends, my family. Those moments where I take that time to really care and show up for people, they've done the same for me. And as I've gotten older, that has paid dividends in ways that I had never experienced. And taking that time has been probably the best thing that I've done.
All right, we're going to wrap it up with 4 random rounding the bases questions. The first one, I'll go to something you already alluded to. I'm trying to come up with this image here. I know you grew up in a big family. I had known that you grew up in Wichita with amazing parents, and I'm not asking you to go down a tough emotional, but I know you recently lost your father, so I feel like I got a chance to know him a little bit just reading what you'd written. But I'm trying to envision what you just talked about, the Archie Bunker neighborhood with the big Indian family at the end of the street or the middle of the street or whatever it was. And I've got to think that shaped everything of who you were, and has to speak somewhat to the resilience of your parents as immigrants too.
Yeah. I mean, my parents moved here with $50 in their pocket, and they raised 5 kids, all went to undergrad, grad school, doctors, business people. But honestly, the most important thing, really happy, successful people who give back to the community. And I am blessed beyond measure to be in a family that taught me so many things, and it has really motivated and propelled me to think about all of those other folks young people who may not have been so lucky and don't have that same access to education and values. And it really fuels me and my coworkers to try to create things and opportunities to help the next generation. To feel very lucky and blessed in that area.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, so let me shift to my second question, more the parent end of things, and this is the side of you that I know in terms of our commonality, being a hockey mom. You're wrapping up with that. By the time this airs, I think that will be wrapping up. But I always, our sons played hockey together, but I always thought goalies are different. And then to be the parent of a goalie is it's one thing to navigate everything you've talked about during this podcast about handling failure and self-doubt. But when you're the mom of the goalie, you always look pretty calm too out there. But I'm just wondering what it is like as the mom of twins and 2 twins that are, I believe, really going to be successful. But what about the vulnerability of being that mom at the rink watching your son, sink or swim, because that's the life of a goalie?
Yeah, I mean, it is hilarious because my son did not win the genetic lottery. There are no plans for him to beyond, his carriage club hockey his career is going to be ending soon at 17. But when they're at the rink, I can feel the acid dripping in my stomach liner as this is happening. And I know it's just recreational hockey. So I love that you think that I'm not stressed, but I am freaking out at a level that is way beyond anything that is in work or in my other personal life. And I am so grateful that my son has had that experience, not only to meet friends that he'll have for a life, but you learn how to deal with pressure, and you learn how to, not think about, not sweat the small stuff. And like, that's the game. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as a parent, I would not give us a great grade, for parenting, but I would say we kind of kept it to first principles. Do your best, be kind, and try not to sweat the small stuff, because at the end of the day, 90% of things that we worry about don't matter in 10 minutes, let alone a week. So luckily that experience has been helpful for my son, because I do think he's very good at that. So there's that, at least.
Yeah. And he'll benefit from that for years to come. Last two questions. I saw in our questionnaire that you love your avid, I don't know what the word is. I should, because my wife is the same. A puzzle maker, puzzle doer, puzzler. I don't know what it is. Is that, I don't even know what the right word is, but
yeah, right.
If you're as obsessed with that as my wife, it's like, I don't have the patience to do one in a year, and it's like, boom, 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 on to the next thing.
Yeah, I became a puzzle savant during pandemic, and I've moved on because life has gotten so busy, and now I am obsessed with Wordle, as is the entire country. And so I find meaningful ways to feed that part of my soul with these like little 5-minute snackable moments. But Wordle is my obsession of the current moment.
I've done it a little bit. I just don't, no offense to anyone, I just don't feel the need to share my results with everybody but that's part of the thing, right? That's how they get everybody in.
It does make me feel kind of bad about myself, because I'm not nearly as good as if I get one, I'm like so excited if I get it in 6 tries, but I have several friends, and we have that I get it in 2 out of 6. Like, how do you do that? So I've tried not to let it affect my self-esteem too much, and focusing on just getting it done. So it's fun.
All right, last question. We started off the podcast talking about, we don't even know what jobs look like in 5 years, 10 years for the kids that are going into college, or the kids that are in high school right now, middle school. But how about for you? What's that next big project? I mean, I'm not asking you to reveal secrets here, but what excites you going forward right now?
Yeah. I love the fact that I have no idea what my world will look like in 5 or 10 years. I do know that whatever I do, it will be around innovation with and applying those principles around listening to your customers and doing a test and learn process, but really in the context of education. Because whether that is helping a young kid understand what credit card the first time, we're coming out with this really, really great product about that. So stay tuned. To helping someone with a mortgage, helping someone have a money mindset, whatever those tools are, I think we need it more than ever, and finding new and improved ways to innovate that resonates with this audience, whether it's young, old, older. That is what I'll be doing regardless, I think, in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So it's an exciting time to be a community American in Kansas City for those reasons.
Well, I'm so grateful, certainly, to the partnership. I think I know that whether there was a partnership with Community America or not, I would want you on this podcast for all of the reasons that have been discussed over the last 43, 44 minutes. We could go on and on. It's been an amazing discussion, fascinating. I'm grateful to call you a friend, to be able to learn from you. And I think that my audience will feel the same way as well, with hopefully a lot of excitement about the future. It's a fun time amidst all of the stress and chaos and uncertainty. And I think that I don't know. I think that if we can embrace that, the world becomes a better place. Maybe that's too simplistic.
No, I agree. There's never been a better time, and there's a lot of big, challenging problems, but I am so confident and encouraged by this next generation, because they have what they need. They have the intellect and they have the empathy to really win. And so I would just say thank you for having me. And if anyone does have questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Anita Newton, and I would love to continue the conversation. So I appreciate it.
Yep, you'll find her easily. Just search for Anita Newton or ask me, but I would point you in that direction. Very easy to find. Anita, thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.